Sometimes what happens when you start watching films and shows with a more critical eye is that you tend to see the worst in things. Pair that with the world just going to hell in a handbasket from 2020 to 2022, and well, you get the point. After consuming copious amounts of abysmal Disney Marvel and Star Wars, I thought it might be time to cleanse my palate with a film that I love, The Fountain. I wanted to take another look and make sure the film I had recommended countless times still had the magic it did when I first watched it. And well, it did not disappoint. So strap yourself in and pour yourself a cup of your favorite dark roast and let me awaken your mind to a film that's truly special. The Fountain, released in 2006, is directed by Darron Aronofsky, who for most of his career has had a particular surrealist style to his films, and The Fountain is no exception. Quick note, being that we are 16 years removed from its release, there are spoils contained, so please beware. The film follows Thomas and Izzy Creo, played by Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz, respectively. Izzy is suffering from a brain tumor, and Tommy is a surgeon working tirelessly to try and cure her. In the opening moments of the film, we follow a conquistador, Tomas, and a bald, nameless man traveling through space in a clear orb with a dying tree at its center. Both men are played by Jackson, and it's here that three separate timelines are established. Tomas the Conquistador has been tasked by his queen, played by Rachel Weisz, to find the Tree of Life. He follows the trail of clues deep into the jungle, where he fights off Mayan warriors and comes face to face with the Mayan priest who appears to strike him down. It is here that we meet Tommy the Space Traveler, a lonely soul traveling through the endless darkness as he approaches a nebula in deep space. His vessel is a transparent orb with a dying tree at its center. But this version of Tommy seems to be haunted by Izzy. She is his long-dead wife from the modern time period. Thomas Creo is the final version we meet, and he's conflicted by his duties as a partner and a scientist. Izzy seems to have accepted her fate of death and is trying to live out her final days with Tommy and finish her book, which she's titled The Fountain. The film is a masterful blend of incredible cinematography and a compelling musical score by the one and only Clint Mansell. At times, the plot seems to run a bit thin, and to be fair, you're thrust into a narrative that is partially formed and characters that the audience likely will have trouble identifying with. But Jackman and Weisz give a great performance and have beautiful chemistry. Jackman is an emotional wreck for most of this film, and he refuses to accept Izzy's fate. It certainly shows his acting range, and it's a big departure from the machismo-fueled roles of Wolverine. Thomas is conflicted by his duty as a husband and that of a surgeon, and when a rare plant sample from Central America shows promise in treating a primate's brain tumor, Tommy feels the hope that's needed for Izzy. As Izzy's condition worsens, Thomas does his best to be present for his wife, who is fearful of the end, but his obsession with curing her keeps him emotionally distant. She tasks him with finishing her book and gives him time to read it over before the end. Izzy does her best, explaining many historical elements of the story, largely centering around a distant dying star wrapped in a nebula, and life and death. This becomes the central theme of the movie and a point that Tommy has a hard time wrapping his head around. The movie suffers from its ambition of taking on weighty subject matter in a very short amount of time. While you can certainly look at this movie as a linear narrative spanning 3 lifetimes, it is likely more helpful to look at it as 3 separate stories, all centering around life springing from death. The Conquistador story being contained within Izzy's book, Thomas Creo looking to cure Izzy of her brain tumor, and the more abstract space adventure being a way for Thomas to work through his grief of losing Izzy, coming to terms with her death, and writing the final pages of her story. The priest strikes down Tomas, but he's reborn as the first father, the creator. The priest then gives himself up to Tomas as a sacrifice. Mortally wounded, Tomas uses the sap from the tree to heal himself, and in the process becomes part of the earth, as the prophecy once told. Thomas Creo plants a seed atop Izzy's grave as a way to nurture life back into the world from her body. The dying star goes supernova, destroying Tommy the Space Traveler and regrowing the tree, and the story is complete. At the end of the day, The Fountain is an art piece. It has so many beautiful moments, but with a lack of a narrative hook, it can take some time to sort out what is actually happening and where it's happening. Outside of Jackman, Weisz, and Ellen Burstyn, the acting comes off a bit flat at times. But with the story centering around those characters for the most part, there isn't much more needed. For a film that was released in 2006, I have to say, the special effects hold up. There are only a few scenes that give off the obvious soundstage vibe. Compare that to most every scene in a show like Rings of Power, and I must say, it is quite impressive. Now, for all the film's faults, I think what's really, truly special is how open this film is to interpretation. The film doesn't tell you anything. It shows you many things and allows you to draw a conclusion from it. Now, whether or not my analysis of the film is correct or not, doesn't matter. There's room for discussion and interpretation of the thing, much like a piece of art in a museum. Some eyes will see things differently. Compare that to something more modern, like She-Hulk or Rings of Power again, where the audience is treated like a mouth-breathing degenerate needing to be spoon-fed every detail of the story, or lack thereof. The Fountain is quite in line with Aronofsky's style, and while it wasn't the most critically acclaimed film on his resume, it is certainly one of the more thought-provoking movies of all time.